Sleep is an important part of maintaining our health, both physical and mental health. When our sleep gets disrupted, every part of our life can be negatively affected, even in ways we don't think. This is a DBT skill called the Nightmare Protocol, where if you're having difficult time getting to sleep because of nightmares, you can rewrite what's been happening so you can have better sleep. Nightmares can really disturb our sleep. Nightmares often leave us feeling scared, anxious, hypervigilant, and tired. It can be really difficult to get back to sleep after having a nightmare, especially if it is a recurring nightmare. Never fear, nightmares don't have to condemn your hopes for sweet dreams. DBT has a multi step process to help deal with nightmares. There are 6 easy steps that you can take to work your way through nightmares. But before we begin, I ask you a very necessary question. Are you ready to work on changing your nightmares? If the answer is yes, then you are ready to learn these 6 steps. For your reference, if you're in dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, we'll be using handout Emotion Regulation Handout 20A, the Nightmare Protocol Step by Step, and the worksheet Emotion Regulation Worksheet 14A, Nightmare Experience Forms. This is based on research. We know that this helps because it's based on imagery rehearsal therapy, known as IRT, which was developed by Barry Krakow and his colleagues. The evidence here is that they did several clinical trials of IRT to show that it was effective in reducing the frequency of nightmares. Your takeaway is that the effectiveness of this method is backed by empirically based research. This nightmare protocol is very similar to the coping ahead skill that we learn in DBT. Both focus on writing out a script and rehearsing it mentally. Thus, both seek to change problem behaviors by imaginal rehearsal of coping and mastery behaviors. So, what do we know about nightmares? 1, they are learned behaviors and become maintained by habits. 2, habitual nightmares can be changed. 3, new dreams are learned by rehearsing them and pairing them with relaxation skills. And 4, most importantly, you must remember that you are in control to gain a sense of mastery over your new dreams. Before we get started, it's important to warm up with necessary skills. This will help you to feel more confident that you are ready to work on changing your nightmares. Step 1, practice relaxation. Decide what relaxation method you want to use while working on your nightmares. Practice it to be sure that you can do it, and that when you practice, you do become more relaxed. Step 2, practice pleasant imagery to be sure that you can evoke imagery in the process. Step 3, coping skills. Decide on and rehearse which coping skills you may need to use in case you become distressed when you're thinking about your nightmares. Distress tolerant skills like handout 6, the tip skills, may be useful if you notice your state of arousal getting very high. Other distress tolerant skills, such as temporary distractions or self soothing, may also be useful. Problem solving may be necessary to determine whether the target nightmare is too severe to work on at that moment. That's why it's important to practice the first skills first to make sure that you're ready to begin. Now that we're ready to begin and we've practiced our necessary skills, feeling relaxed, having the ability to access pleasant memories, and having our coping skills on hand, it's time to get started on our new habit. Choosing a recurring nightmare to work on is important to consider selecting one that you're prepared to manage. Don't start with your most severe or traumatic nightmares unless you're very prepared. This may mean having a therapist or someone to help along with this process. First, practice on easier nightmares. That way you can work up to harder ones. Now let's pause here for a second because trauma nightmares are different. For a person who has experienced something highly stressful and traumatic, the content of their nightmares may be of their actual trauma, the actual event, or closely associated scenarios to this trauma. These type of nightmares can even feel like a flashback, where the person is taken back in time to the event, as if it is happening all around them in the moment. Their five senses are activated, most commonly sounds, smells, or images. Those sensory inputs can trigger the event. These types of nightmares can be especially painful to experience and may leave you to believe that your trauma never ended or the idea that healing is impossible. While this may seem impossible, there is hope for trauma nightmares, but the scope of this video does not address trauma nightmares. Trauma nightmares may require additional support from your therapist to help you to establish a safe sense of safety where you're sleeping, like using grounding techniques, or to work through narratives of the content of your dreams, such as keeping track of your dreams and sharing them and discussing them in therapy. Utilizing imagery rehearsal treatment, which is led by your therapist, and the cognitive behavioral type of treatment to help you rewrite, rehearse, and re experience your dreams so that they can be less threatening and traumatizing. Please do not try to use this technique without consulting with your therapist or without having some type of support to help you to address your trauma focused nightmares. If you want to learn more about how trauma can affect your dreams, I've included a link from the Sleep Foundation on this slide for you to do further research. Next, now that we're here, start by writing down your target nightmare in moment to moment detail. Include events in the environment, as well as your thoughts, your feelings, your assumptions about yourself during the dream. Again, if those of you have selected a traumatic dream, this nightmare may be traumatic in and of itself. So, the key to this type of protocol is to develop a sense of mastery of the nightmare, not exposure to the nightmare itself. So, please consider learning this skill with the support of your therapist if you've chosen a traumatic nightmare. Now that we've written down our nightmare into every detail we can, we're going to choose a way to change the outcome of the nightmare. This can be any change before anything traumatic or bad happens. It can be anything you want it to be, as long as it prevents the bad outcome of the usual nightmare from occurring. There are some people who believe that the more outrageous the change, for instance, a gun turning into a banana, the better the protocol works. The outcome can include new information, and this information did not need to come from the original dream. For example, a male veteran who feels ashamed of his own behavior in war and believes that he let down his troops can stand up in the dream and see a huge group of people whose lives have been saved by his behavior. Remember, it is important that the new ending to your dream makes you feel competent and good about yourself. Do you find yourself stuck in your nightmares? Is it hard to find a different way out? If you find yourself having a difficult time making dream changes, there are some suggestions offered. Though remember, no matter what changes you decide on, you have to have an increased sense of mastery over your dream in order to change that outcome. So this list is only the beginning. There's no limit to how you can change your dreams because it is only a dream. First option, devise alternate endings to the dream. The alterations in the ending may range from minor to extreme differences. Number 2, insert reminders into the dream that prompt different ways of viewing the events of the dream. For example, you may place meaningful objects into the dream that remind you that you survived. You may want to place other people you know in the dream who remind you of your strengths, or you may wish to see a spiritual being in the dream that represents safety or peace. Number 3, transform threatening weapons into harmless objects, like turning a gun into a banana. Number 4, distance yourself by viewing the dream through a screen or TV that you can switch off or change the channel. Number 5, remind yourself in some way that this is only a dream and not real. 6, transform what is frightening in the dream to something harmless or helpful. 7, visualize yourself transported to a place of safety or peace. Or 8, make peace with whatever is trying to harm you. Now that you've been able to change the content of the dream to change the outcome, the next step is to write down the full nightmare with the changed outcome and any other changes that you have made. It's important that you write it down with as much detail as you did the first, and perhaps more detail this time around. Now that we have our script, it's important that we rehearse. Rehearse the entire changed dream by visualizing it each night before practicing your relaxation skills. The relaxation should be something that is effective. Now, each of us might find a different strategy to be helpful to them at different times. So, some find mindfulness practices or progressive relaxation skills, like the paired muscle relaxation of our distress tolerance skills, to be particularly helpful with this step. Remember, it's important to rehearse the entire dream by visualizing it before we practice a relaxation. Relaxation comes afterwards to help us ease into sleep. And finally, rehearse the new dream as often as possible, even during the day, and follow it up by relaxation techniques. The key here is to remember that changing nightmares takes practice, it takes practice, and it takes practice. But in general, the effects should show up within a few weeks. Consistency does pile up when it comes to changing our nightmares. In case you need some more tips for better sleep, I offer you a few tips that are also a part of our sleep hygiene in DBT. Try to get balanced sleep. The amount of sleep that helps you feel like you're rested is balanced sleep. Undersleeping and oversleeping can be a real problem for your mood, how you function at home, work, or school, and your health. Not getting the sleep you need can make it more difficult to pay attention and focus. It can increase your anxiety and depression and worsen your overall health. While there are many reasons that you might not be getting enough sleep, it's important that we look at the ones that are coming in common with nightmares. Because nightmares are often very pesky reasons why you're not getting enough sleep, some of these skills in sleep hygiene can help. Stick to your schedule, set and pick a bedtime routine, don't eat or drink a lot before you go to bed, avoid caffeine or nicotine or other substances that can stimulate your brain. You should exercise, but only in the morning or in the early afternoon, because regular exercise can enhance your sleep quality. But of course, consult with a doctor before you start any exercise routines. And cool it. Keep the temperature of your room cooler to help your body ease into sleep. That's not all. Here are some more tips for you for sleep hygiene. Skip those naps. Daytime naps are the thieves of a good night's sleep. Keep your room dark and quiet and screen free. Use your bed only for sleeping. Work out in another room if it's possible. A hot shower or bath before bed can help you to relax too. And remember, sleeping pills, though tempting, are not a long-term solution. And finally, avoid judgmental thoughts. If you can't fall asleep right away, try speaking more gently to yourself. It's okay. I'll fall asleep eventually. Because these types of skills take practice, I encourage you to review the content of this recording at any point as you get yourself to a better night's sleep.